Hey everyone, Dr. Ritza here, downtown Toronto, neurostructural chiropractor, and hey Instagram, Dr. Ritza here, downtown Toronto, neurostructural chiropractor, and we are Lunch and Learn TV. This is episode 16, and today we're going to be talking about the best exercises to prevent headaches. I'm going to talk a little bit about headaches because it's headache week here on our social media feeds. So today we're going to talk about the prevention of headaches. We're not going to talk about the management or the treatment of headaches because that's not our approach. So the approach at our center is to correct core problems with the spine and nervous system to stop headaches from happening in the first place. And if you suffer from them already, the correction of your nervous system and the structure or your posture, 99% of the time is going to lead to better or no headaches at all. So I want to talk a little bit about headaches and our approach in terms of the prevention with actual exercise. So to make things really simple, I think the best way to understand headaches is to look at your structure and look at your posture. So the best example that we use in our clinic is usually we use a sledgehammer, but here we have a hammer. So most people, they don't sit with really fantastic upright posture where their ears and shoulders and hips are lined up, or we say stacked up. They don't have fantastic posture. What ends up happening is the head comes forward. And so with our hammer example, the head kind of comes forward like this. And so you can imagine for minutes on your phone, hours at your computer, or weeks, months, decades of having this forward head posture, the muscles in here through the forearm, they're going to get really, 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 really tight. So you could rub them, you can acupuncture them, you can stretch them, but until you actually fix and correct the structure, those muscles back here are going to be really, really tight and are not going to lessen up or loosen up until you actually fix the structure, fix your posture, and fix the underlying core problem. So that's going to be our approach with headache prevention in terms of the 7 exercises. And what it's going to be all about is strengthening the posterior chain, or the muscles on the back of the neck, the mid-back, and the low back, so that they are better able to hold your spine up proper in the right aligned position. Now, there are going to be some cases where your spine and or your nervous system is so dysfunctional, there's so many core problems that you're not going to be able to fix this alone with exercise, and we're going to talk about that at the end. But I want to go over those 7 exercises, and I think we have one bonus one there as well that's going to help strengthen the back, the posterior chain, so you can get your head stacked up over your spine. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the chin tuck. So the chin tuck's the easiest. That's where we're going to get the head properly lined up over the shoulders so that the muscles in the back of the neck get strengthened, as well as put you in the proper posture. So again, our chin tuck from the side is where we're standing or sitting, shoulders and hips are lined up, and then the chin tuck is just bringing the neck back so that my eyes are still parallel to the ground, my chin is nicely in, I'm strengthening the deep neck flexors, and then I relax after 10 seconds, and after a small 10-second break, we can go in and do another chin tuck. So not only is the chin tuck a great way to strengthen some of the deep neck flexors to make sure that you can get your head back and stacked up in the proper position, but it'll also stretch the suboccipital muscles at the base of the skull, which are a huge culprit for cervicogenic headaches and other headaches that many of our practice members suffer from. So exercise 1 is the chin tuck. Exercise 2, I think I like the cat camel for exercise 2. So the cat camel is a really simple mobilization. We've talked about this lots already, but the reason I really like it is it's going to mobilize the spine really safely, and then especially when you get up into that cat position, it's going to stretch the entirety of the spine and stretch all of the muscles, especially into the base of the skull and the neck, that when they hold tension can cause referral headaches traveling up into the skull. So again, for our cat camel, probably the most important part of this will be the cat, and that's where we're really pushing up through the arms, really tucking our chin in, and really bringing our pelvis back, and then going into our cow or dog, depending on what yoga studio you practice at. And so the cat camel, I think, or cat cow should be part of your everyday mobilization routine. And if you do suffer from headaches, I'd spend a little bit more time in that cat position, and you can even get up and just hang out here for a bit. Let the vertex of the head hang towards the floor, really stretching out those suboccipital muscles at the base of the skull. So not exactly a strengthening exercise, but in terms of headache prevention, fantastic. Next easiest exercise after the cat camel is the bird dog. So bird dog, again, we've gone over lots before. I've got tons of videos on YouTube going over the bird dog, and I really like this one because it's an easy to do anywhere body weight exercise that, when you have your chin properly tucked, is going to strengthen the entirety of the spine, focusing a lot on the lumbar and the thoracic spine, but also on the cervical spine if you target it well. So just so we can show a good example, the bird dog, which we covered last week on Instagram as well. Chin is tucked, I'm pushing up through the hands so that I'm activating the serratus anterior, and then you'll notice that when my arm and leg come back and forward, nothing moves except for the arm and leg. There's no change in the core. My chin stays nicely tucked, and then we go on to do the other side. And again, that's going to strengthen those muscles back of the neck and through the spine. It's going to help keep you stacked up, head back, and make sure that your posture is fantastic. As we go on to some of our more dynamic and more complicated exercises, one that I think is kind of a bonus that I really like is the reach, roll, and lift. Now, this is more of a shoulder rehab exercise, but I do like it for headache prevention because it's going to strengthen a lot, again, through the neck muscles, through the periscapular, or the muscles around the shoulder blade. Going to get them back and down in a nice retracted position. And in terms of stacking you up, is going to be really fantastic if you can do it in the long term. So we have a video on YouTube for the reach, roll, and lift. It's not great to demonstrate right now, so I'm going to encourage you, head over to YouTube and our YouTube channel and check out the reach, roll, and lift. And I think that's going to be really fantastic for you. Our next exercise that I'm not going to demonstrate because we don't have the equipment here, going into some more weight bearing and a bit more intense exercises beyond the body weight ones that we've covered so far. I really like just like a simple row. So in terms of a row, whether it's a rowing machine, using a cable row, doing a bent over row, anything that's going to activate the trapezius muscles, mainly the middle and lower, and the rhomboids, which again is going to help the periscapular muscles and getting you all stacked up. I really like rows for headache prevention. It's going to be fantastic in terms of activating the posterior chain through the mid-back and to some extent the lower back. It is going to give you lots of ample time to practice keeping your chin tucked in a nice stacked up position. By far one of my favorite exercises for headache prevention is focusing on the mid-back mobility, and I really like the reach back. So the reach back is something I give to almost every single practice member because it is so good for getting the chest up, getting some movement through the mid-back. And a real reason why I like the reach back is that if you're really curved through the thoracic spine, it's really tough to get the neck in the right position. You're never going to be stacked up. So when you can get the mid-back in the proper position, it's much easier to get the neck stacked up and in a good spot. So again, for the reach back, what we do for this one is we sit on our heels with our bum. Hand and elbow goes in front of us, right between the knees, and then the hand is either on the small of our back or on the back of our neck, and then twisting through the spine, we go up to the ceiling, and I can get about 60 or 70 degrees of thoracic rotation there, and come back, and that's the reach back, and we would do that 2 or 3 sets of 10 on either side. We have that as part of our MOVE curriculum and the workshop that we're hosting this Wednesday, and that video is also available on the YouTubes. Now, I think when you can master some of those 4 or 5 exercises to get some basic strength in through the spine, then we move on to our more dynamic and more explosive exercises, and we're talking, of course, about the deadlift and the squat. So why are the deadlift and the squat really good for headache prevention? Well, they're really going to target almost all of the muscles of the posterior chain. So those are the muscles that are going to pull the hammer back and get you stacked up into the right position. They're going to strengthen the back. They're going to be really good for protecting and stabilizing the spine. And in general, if they can get you in that nice stacked up position, the chances of having headaches are much less. So in terms of practicing the deadlift, what I thought would be really good is just to go over a proper deadlift routine because we're lacking a few hundred pounds here to practice with. So important thing when doing a deadlift is you want to have most of the motion coming through the hips. You want to have your core nice and braced and your spine neutral. And again, you're going to be as stacked up as possible with your chin tucked. So in terms of practicing a good deadlift, what we're going to use is we're going to use a dowel, and we're going to use 3 points of contact, one on the neck, one on the mid-back, and one on the low back. And your deadlift should start and end with all 3 points of contact still there. So if you check this out from the side, we've got a point of contact in the neck, the mid-back, and the low back. And to do a great deadlift, you start by sending the hips backwards. And at this point, I would run out of room, and if I do any more movement through the hips, I'll lose that point of contact in the low back. And of course, if I'm not stacked up and my head is forward, I lose the point of contact in the neck, which I'll switch arms and you can see that better. Good. So I would lose that point of contact in the neck. So at this point, if you were going to go down to pick up something off the floor, I would have to bend my legs. Let's try that again. I'd have to bend my legs and then pick it up so that I maintain that good deadlift position. So as I deadlift back and forth, I could do this all day. It'd be really fun, healthy for my spine. And not only is it going to be fantastic for strengthening your glutes and building power for whatever sport or exercise that you're using it for, but actually really good for headaches if it can get your posture all stacked up. And then the other thing that I want to talk about is the squats. The squat is going to be like the deadlift in terms of strengthening that posterior chain. It's going to hold you upright and give you that really fantastic posture. And so going over the squat, we can probably dedicate an entire Lunch and Learn TV episode to this. But the biggest mistake that we find with people is that they use kind of a knee or quadricep dominant pattern. And what I mean by that is when they go in to do their squat, they really come forward, putting a lot of pressure on the knees and really leaning just too much body weight forward. And so the issue with that is a lot of stress on the knees, not loading the spine properly, not engaging the glutes as much. So if you are doing squats and you think you are, or you're actually not sure if you're going farther back enough, one of the best ways to practice is doing a box squat, where you come back, you practice on sitting down something, in this case my couch, but you can also use a box at the gym, and then coming back up. And so a really great squat would be sending the butt back through the hips, and then coming back up. And you can see the difference between knee dominant pattern versus a hip dominant pattern. So whether you are squatting for the millionth time or the second time, I think it's always good to just practice a little bit before you go through your routine to make sure that the pattern you are using is the best possible one to keep, number one, your spine from getting injured, and number two, to make sure that you're targeting all the right muscles that are going to help with headache prevention. Now, I think that's all I've got. Oh, I got one more bonus one on our list. So, a big point of issue for a lot of people with headaches, again, is the suboccipital muscles. So, one of the good things, and this is less on the prevention side and more on the actual dealing with if you had a headache before you can get in to see us, is doing a little bit of rolling on the base of the skull where the suboccipital muscles are. So, we're going to try and do this, given that I don't have a cameraman or woman. So let's see if we can do this. So, oh yeah, perfect. So at the base of the skull, you have what are called the suboccipital muscles. And the way to find them best is to take your earlobe and go back along, and you'll feel this ridge of the skull where if you go just below it, you can kind of creep up and in. It feels like you're going to go into your brain. And then if you follow that up, you notice there's this nice little ridge. And it's like what you would imagine like a rock climber having to climb up and over. And so that's where the suboccipital muscles are. And so one of the best things you can do is put a lacrosse ball back there, or two lacrosse balls taped together, and then you can just lie on it. So I'll give a little demonstration here. So lacrosse ball, suboccipital area, and then what I can do is I can either just lie on it, or I can roll around a little bit, and it can be pretty intense, so you don't want to put your full body weight into it. And in this case, just nice and easy breaths while that lacrosse ball is sinking slowly into the suboccipital muscles, which can provide a really great release of those muscles. So those are 7 or 8 really fantastic exercises for headache prevention. And then I want to talk a little bit about when those exercises don't work. And this is especially if you are suffering from headaches. So one of our biggest initiatives as a neurostructural chiropractic center is that we want to restore your neurological and your structural function. So what does that mean in English? I want your nervous system functioning as best as it can so that you have the best possible brain-body connection, which is a requirement for health. And then I also want to see your spine and your structure all stacked up so that your posture is perfect. And that we know that it's going to be very difficult to have really good function if the structure itself does not work. And so one of the best examples of that is a door hinge. And so let's pretend that you have a door hinge and that it's really creaky and you're not getting great movement out of it. So that's where you go in with some WD-40 and you lube it up and it starts moving a little bit better. That is kind of what these exercises are like. They're like the WD-40 on the spine and on the joints that are going to prevent further issues by getting everything to move a little bit better and a little bit more stable. But a lot of people that we see, they have a door hinge that's crooked. So, you can WD-40 it or exercise it until kingdom come, but unless you actually correct the core problem and you straighten things out and make sure everything's aligned, or in our language is stacked up, it's going to be really, really challenging to get those headaches or some of the other health problems associated with that core problem in the spine to go away. So if you do find that you are shifted forward and that exercises and some other self-care is not working for you, it could be that you have a core problem with your spine that needs some professional help, and that's what we take care of at our office. So I really hope this Lunch and Learn TV was good. I hope that when I watch it later, I didn't show my butt too much, or didn't give an odd view, or didn't give an exercise that was well demonstrated. And if that's so, then I will try to update it later this week. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to direct message us or leave a comment below. Always love to get comments and figure out what people want to see. Otherwise, Dr. Alex Ritza, neurostructural chiropractor, signing off. I hope everyone has an amazing week. And if you're bored and you're looking for something to do, I highly recommend you check out the movie Icarus. It's about doping in sport, and it is like a 10 out of 10. And until next week, guys, have an amazing week, and I'll see you soon. Bye.